Do it again, this is how it goes. Playing to win, this is how it goes.
Hey everybody, what's going on? It's Gregory Laporte from GamerFitNation.com, and today we got a good review for you. It's Alien Colonial Marines. It's being published by Sega, developed by Gearbox Software. The console it's being reviewed on is the PlayStation 3. It is also available on the Xbox 360, the PC, and the Wii U. The game released on February 12, 2013 is a first-person shooter and is retailing for $59.99 on consoles and $49.99 on the PC. Now, this is a pretty somewhat average, mediocre game, so and just look on and you'll see why I'll talk about that. Alien Colonial Marines has you taking control of a group of Marines that come upon the ship called the USS Sulaco. Now, you happen to stroll upon the ship, and it's coming next to your base, your village, your space station where you live. Now, the game, the storyline it's not the most interesting. I mean, if you're a fan of the Aliens franchise and Aliens, movies, there's gonna be some pretty familiar characters within the movie of this game, but it's just not it's not the most enthralling type of experience you're gonna enjoy. I mean, you see Bishop, you see Hicks, you can get some of their weapons throughout the levels when you're adventuring and you're kind of exploring. I mean, the single players, some of the single player moments in the storyline and the conversations between the characters, it's just really boring, and it's just not entertaining at all. Like, you just sit down and you just watch it, and you're just waiting for the next moment to come so you can just progress through the story. Now, there's not a lot of holy crap moments that's gonna make you jump out of your seat. There's also the part where I feel like the game just it doesn't really have a point. I mean, you're trying to go from one thing to the next, and you're trying to find aliens, and then after all of a sudden you're trying to find Michael Whalen, which you find there's a little in conjunction where that meets up, but it's not enough to where it's gonna become a main part of the storyline. Honestly, you just feel like you're trying to survive, and when you have a game about aliens on a space station, you're trying to survive. It's not something that it's gonna mesh well together if the gameplay is really terrible, which, speaking of gameplay, comes into my next part. But before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the cutscenes and the movies that are CGI movies that you see within the game, which I have to say are very, very terrible. I'm not lying when I tell you this. When I was playing the game and I saw the cutscenes, my instant reaction was, why is it lagging? Why is it jump skipping? The frame rate issues when you're watching a video from after beating a level or at the end of a level is just really bothersome. It's a pain when you're watching a video. You're sitting there and you're seeing your character skip through a cutscene because it's all choppy and the frame rate does not work very well together in it. But that's one aspect of what's wrong with the single player in terms of the videos and how the cutscenes mesh together. Overall the story is kind of basic and bland, so that's nothing really too bad. But the meat of this, where a lot of the problems arise, is in the gameplay. Now, if there's one word that I can give the sound and the gameplay in this game that you'll most be able to relate to, that would be forgettable. The game is forgettably annoying. I mean, you have guns, because this is a first-person shooter. So we have to say this is a first-person shooter, so guns are important. So when you're shooting a gun, it has to actually sound like, you're shooting with some force and some power. I don't want to be shooting a gun and it feels like I'm shooting a kid's plaything, where when you pull the trigger, it goes pew 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 pew. No, that's not what a gun sounds like. I mean, we've all played first-person shooters. We've all played the Call of Duties, the Battlefields, the Kill Zones, the Resistance Force. Like, there's all, even though those aren't the same type of games like this, in terms of story and scale and whatnot. They're first person shooters, so a gun should sound like a gun. Now, the voice acting, you have the character Bishop and Hicks in the game, but they don't really add much. I mean, the storyline and the dialogue between them is kind of terrible and it's kind of uninteresting. There's no facial emotion. They're like basically zombies in the game, basically talking to one another. The only time there's any emotion in the game is when you're talking with your squad mates and basically you guys get angry and have a disagreement about something and you guys get angry. That's when there's only really any raw emotion because it relates to how you're feeling at the time because the game makes you get angry. And the gameplay, I'll put this, when I first played the game, I literally got stuck in a section of the game because the character I had would not go through the animation and I was stuck behind a door. I had to then restart that section to beat it, and then I received another glitch where my character did not go to the door to open it again. So the game is riddled with glitches, and it really doesn't help your experience and help you progress. It just makes it more annoying. I mean, the game doesn't do anything in terms of first-person shooting. It doesn't reinvent the conventions. It doesn't do anything miraculous. I mean, you'll have a fun time, when you get further on in the story because it's an aliens game. So you'll find something you might like, but trust me, you're not gonna find much. The game doesn't plays pretty much like a multiplayer experience. And if you like playing multiplayer games and your single player games, then you're probably gonna like this. Which I don't know why you would like that, because I like having two things separate. So I know that it's two separate things and making one great game, but it doesn't feel like that. So the game just really feels like it was confused when it was being made, and it's not well put together. I mean, the gameplay is lackluster. The game's average at most. Alien Colonial Marines is an awful game. There are a few spots where the game seems to be crawling out of the darkness, but it heads right back in the other direction. If you somehow get a hold of this game, go in with very low expectations. If the game did not have as many glitches in it as it did, it would at best be a subpar first-person shooter that plays like a full-fledged multiplayer experience. Fans of Aliens might like it, but those are probably the die-hard ones. Stay away from this one, you'll thank me for it later. Alien Colonial Marines gets a 3 out of 10.